I'm the editor at Spark, and I have been the editor with Spark since we were Slickety Love, like, what was that, 5 years ago, 6 years ago. I took a little break for a little while in between Spark becoming, like, coming under new ownership, just for a few months, and then came back because I love flash fiction so much, and I love working with these ladies. So we're going to talk a little bit about today about writing flash fiction romance in particular, since we do only publish romance. Sometimes people write a story and they think it's a romance, but it's not. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to make sure your story is actually a romance so that you get acquired. So we have a few of the people who basically run Spark with us, and we have a couple people who are new to Spark, and we're going to introduce y'all to them. Let's see if this works. There we go. Okay. So there's me. Yay. This is a small miracle that I'm able to get this to work because I am not technical. My husband is an IT engineer, so he does all this for me, but he's left with the kids. So if something goes wrong, it's all on me, which spells disaster. So I'm Kim Duffy. I am married and have 4 kids. I'm represented by Karen Solom, and I have my debut novel released by Bethany House in May, and my next novel comes out in March. So I write historical women's fiction. Look, I forgot the F. See, I did make a mistake. Hope, if you want to introduce, and just as we go through, as your picture pops up, just introduce yourself.
Okay, so I'm Hope Welburn, and I am represented by Jim Hart of Heartline Literary Agency. I am not published yet, other than in Spark, but I have a book out on submission right now, so we'll see. I write romantic suspense, so I like to mix in a lot of murder and mayhem with my romance and freak everybody out who writes just straight romance. But I think it makes it fun to have a little danger mixed in there. So
a fun story. A few of us I'm part of a writing group with Hope, and a few of us were at the Biltmore, and Hope was like, that'd be a great place to hide a body. And the other woman and I were like, telling all these romantic stories, and she's talking about where you could stash a body. So we're like, not sure we want to be here with you, Hope.
And she stayed friends with me, but she won't go to Biltmore with me anymore. So.
I won't stay in dark alleys with Hope.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Purcell. I'm the social media manager of Spark Flash Fiction. So if you see anything on our media channels, it's probably me posting. I don't have an agent yet, and I've only been published in Spark, but I love to write historical romance that is centered around faith and family. So while Hope is looking for places to stash dead bodies, I'm randomly throwing historical tidbits at people who really couldn't care less. So, that's me.
And Jennifer's fairly new. She came out a couple months ago, and she is amazing. Like, we would be lost without her. We actually were lost without her. We were kind of floundering around, not knowing what to do. And she kind of is the glue that holds everyone together. We're very grateful for her.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm Leslie DeVote. That's how you pronounce my name. So, and yes, I am married and I have 3 kids, and my kitchen is under renovation, and I just heard banging. So if you might hear that in the background. My agent is Bob Hostetler with the Steve Lobby Agency. And I constantly change my genre. Right now I'm calling it contemporary romantic comedy. Sometimes I say I write Southern romance. Sometimes I write contemporary women's fiction with a really strong romance element. So it just really depends on the day of the week. This is what I said last night. So I am not published except for in Spark as well. And I actually have 2 books out on submission right now. So hoping one of those will stick somewhere.
And I'm really connected to one of those stories, and I love it. And I think it's adorable and very hooky.
Yes.
Very hooky.
And I think, Leslie, is that the one that the character's name is Hope?
That's the one whose character's name is Hope?
That's the one, yes.
Well, I'm Sherry, and I'm married and have 2 kids. And I write young adult fantasy. It's kind of magical. I love dreamy settings, so I'm always wandering around looking like, oh yeah, this would make a great setting. So I love traveling and seeing new places just to give me new imagination. I'm not published yet except in Spark and Havoc. So I'm looking for an agent right now. I'm hoping I can get one this year. I have my current work in progress is I'm polishing it right now, so I'm ready to send it off.
Okay. So Sherry, Hope, and Leslie, will you guys just real quick tell everyone what it is you
Yeah.
do at Spark?
Sorry, I forgot to do that.
Oh,
So I'm the production manager. So I'm trying to keep people on track, and I send all the contracts out, and then sometimes I do some proofreading or checking to be sure things were done right. But last issue, I think Jennifer got to do that, have that honor. So that's what I do. So trying to be sure we just stay on track. And apparently I'm also running our new PayPal account, which is a very scary thought because I don't even balance my own checkbook, but we'll
Full-time
make
job right there.
because then we don't make a lot of money.
So I forgot to mention that too, Kim. Sorry. I am the web manager for Spark, and so I design the website and put all of your stories on there and pick out the graphics and all of that stuff, and send out the emails for the issues.
And I'm going to be the acquisitions editor and proofreader once I get started.
Hey, we're so excited to have an acquisitions editor and a proofreader. I'm really bad at proofreading, so I'm really excited. Okay, so real quick, let's go over what flash fiction is. Flash fiction is any story that's less than 1,000 words. It has all the elements of a story, a beginning, and middle, and an end. Sometimes people will send like parts of a larger work, like a scene from a larger book, and that's not flash fiction. That's just a part of your book. So it's typically limited to one POV, one major internal or external conflict, and just a few characters. The impact of flash fiction comes from the story's brevity, and it's a snapshot or a moment. It's not stagnant, though. A conflict must occur, and it has to be resolved. So flash fiction is basically, I heard it once say that if a novel is a movie, flash fiction is a commercial. It's a story in it of itself. It's just short, but it has all the elements of a story. So here's one of the most famous flash fiction pieces, For Sale, Baby Shoes Never Worn, Ernest Hemingway. So we have a beginning, a middle, and an end. We have conflict, and we have resolution. Kind of. Maybe resolution for the poor parents. I'm trying to move this window around because the screen keeps popping up on different sides of my screen, so I keep having to move this around. So why write flash fiction? So flash fiction is great to write if you're just starting to write. I keep telling my 15-year-old daughter, she keeps starting novels. She started like 8 novels and she never finishes them because it's overwhelming. So I'm like, why don't you just write a flash fiction story? Learn through that, learn through writing these very short stories, the elements of good writing, and then you'll feel more equipped to go ahead and write longer works. She's not listening to me though, because she's 15. It's a really great place to explore other genres. My first historical piece was a flash fiction piece. I started writing contemporary romance and I was super intimidated by writing historicals. Just the research involved and knowing whether or not I was getting the details right kind of scared me a little bit. So I wrote a few historical flash fiction pieces, and then I felt better able to write a longer novel. So if you write mystery and you want to see if you can figure out how to write a fantasy, or, you know, it's a really great place to explore that. You're trying to sell a book and you need publishing credits. So it looks really, it looks really good to editors and agents if you have publishing credits. And Spark is a great place to get published because we're just starting out under new ownership. And so we're building not only our reader base, which is pretty broad. We've inherited, we've kind of grandfathered in our old readers, but we're also trying to get more people to submit. So we're a really great place to submit stories to. Gives you the opportunity to learn how to work with an editor and experience with track changes, which is important. Like, it's important to know how to work with an editor, and it's important to know how to use track changes because that's what editors use to edit your stories. And you love to write, or you just don't have time right now to devote to a longer project. It's a really great way to keep your writing fresh and up to date. You're working on a longer project, but you just need a break for some perspective, and you will be able to hone your writing skills, your word choice, sentence structure. It's also a good place to experiment with different, say, like POVs, or if you write like, you know, first person and you want to try third person, you know, it's a great place to experiment with that. A little bit about Spark. We started Splickety Love in 2013. We were an imprint of Splickety Magazine. We rebranded as Spark in 2017. Splickety was dissolved, and we acquired Spark in 2019. Leslie, Hope, and I, and then another friend who's since not able to be involved anymore. We showcase flash fiction from new writers, best-selling authors, and everyone in between. If you've ever read our magazine, then you know we have a feature author every issue. They're usually best-selling, award-winning authors. So that's kind of cool, especially if you're a new writer and you know, you get published, you get acquired, and then your story can be beside, I don't know, Rachel McMillan's story, or, you know, Kara Putman, maybe, like, who knows, so that's kind of cool. We showcase, let's see, concise stories amid life's busyness, and you can take your fiction in smaller bites, which is nice for people because they're busy. So if you're waiting in the carpool line, you can pull up a magazine and read 3 or 4 stories, and that's kind of nice. Or in the grocery store checkout. That's what I've been doing since I'm on a screen fast. I can't look at Facebook anymore. So now I just read some flash fiction while I'm waiting. Okay. What makes a spark? Romance is the #1 read genre in the world. A lot of people like to knock it, but it makes by far the most money. So it's not something that should be disparaged. As Christians, we view romantic love as an extension of God's love for us. So I always have romantic elements in my books. Even though I write women's fiction, I have romantic elements in my books. And I love that because I always feel like it's a really great, non-threatening way of showcasing Christ's love for us. In the general market, your romance can have wider parameters. You can do things that you can in the Christian market. We don't do that. We don't believe romance is lust or erotica, and we strive to publish fiction that's sexy, but without sex. And you can do that, and I will show you how. Let's talk about romance. A romance is a story where 2 characters are attracted to one another. The obstacle occurs when the characters try or don't try to be together. That's super important because if you can take the romance out of the story, you no longer are writing a romance. You're writing women's fiction or general fiction, but you're not writing a romance. So, for instance, we'll get some stories that are really good and that have romantic elements, but the story isn't about just the romance. So that's not a romance. And we will occasionally acquire like a women's fiction or general fiction story, but few and far between. Usually a romance is limited to the POV of the hero and the heroine. In flash fiction, one or the other. We don't want to go back and forth because there's not enough room for that. And then in typical length romances, the shifts occur at scene or chapter breaks. So with flash fiction, you have to know where to start. You can't write the meet cute and the happily ever after in a flash fiction piece. I know some people are really tempted to write an entire romance and just kind of condense it, but you can't do that. You just don't have the space for that. You need to know when to stop, and you need to know it's okay to let your story linger. It's okay to let your reader wonder what's going to happen next. I know, so for instance, in a lot of romances, they'll have like an epilogue where like they'll show the couple happily married or getting married or, with their first child. And you can't do that with flash fiction. You just have to let the reader finish the story in their own head. You don't want to waste words on backstory. So just craft 1 or 2 well-written phrases of dialogue or description and let the reader know what they need to know. You can't give the whole backstory because that would just be another story. And remember you're writing romance, so let your words build heat and tension. Always try to let your words do double duty. I have a note on here that I can't find, but I don't know what I wrote down there. I know it was important though about that. So I think I said something like, if your character's going to a fast food restaurant, instead of having she went to a fast food restaurant, just write McDonald's. Like use words that are familiar and things that are familiar to your readers so that you can condense those down. Okay. So here's an example of one of my very favorite stories by Lesley that we published in winter 2019. The start, Bee lifted the bow, aiming for the crowded target. She pinched her left eye closed, pulled back on the string, and released it. The arrow zipped through the air and pierced the center of the ring target, besting the other archers. So right there, you've established setting in place. I think like a sentence down, you can establish the year, but I think we had the year on top too. It's a historical piece. And you've also established that the character is maybe a little out of the ordinary because she's besting the other archers and she's female. So that perhaps wasn't very common back then. This is really the only backstory she has in the story. Another precision shot from my older sister. Cecilia spun her parasol. Too bad your aim isn't so good when it comes to gentlemen's hearts. That tells you everything you need to know about this story. You know that Bee isn't great with men and she is maybe failing in the area of romance. You don't really, there's no other backstory. You don't know anything else about what happened in her past to put her in that position, but that's enough. I'm gonna sneeze. Sorry. Heat and tension. I live in Ohio, so I have like chronic allergies. So here I think is a really cute way that Leslie built some heat. She dropped the arrows into her quiver and fisted her tingling fingers. Surely her stomach's flutter was telling her to beware of this stranger and nothing more. Nothing more. And then stop. She shot the arrow, sending it to the target's outer ring. I don't believe it, Henry clapped. Hope you don't regret spending the evening with a second son. He drew up beside her and offered his arm. Bee passed the bow to her pouting sister and placed her fingers around her prince's arm. Hope your toes don't regret spending the evening with an archer. Now, she could easily write a scene at the ball where they're dancing together, but she can't because she had like 989 words. So the story had to stop. And that is a perfect place to stop it because we have kind of like the promise of a happily ever after. And that's all the readers need. Please don't kill your characters in a flash fiction romance. That's not happy. I don't like that. Spark ignites a fire. So these are two stories that were published under Spark before it came under new ownership. The first one is by Lindsay Brackett. My time on Capitol Hill divides two ways. The time I spend actually working as an intern, which amounts to lots of copies and coffee, and the time I spend avoiding Blythe Gilbert. So right away, you know what the story's about, you know where it's set, and you know who the character is. That one sentence tells you a lot, and that's what you need to do with flash fiction. You need to tell a lot in each of your sentences. They need to be packed with information. It also kind of sets the tone for the story. You get a sense of Lindsay's voice and a sense of the character's like thought process, her sarcasm, that kind of thing. And then the second one, the third R in Roller Ring blinked and flashed before turning dark. Frank stared at the sign, gripping the steering wheel. He couldn't help but make parallels between the fading neon letters and his wife's declining brain. Again, same. It's you know where the story's set at the roller rink. You could get a sense of the tension and the battle that Frank is dealing with his wife. And if anyone has any questions, just feel free to interrupt me. I know I talk really fast, so just interrupt me. 10 romantic moments worth less than 1,000 words. So I love when I get stories that are kind of outside the box. I love stories about unconventional couples. I know a lot of times it's, here's a young couple first falling in love, and that's fantastic. I love those stories too, but I also like stories about established couples or couples coming back together or reunion romance. There are moments of realization. So these are the things you really think about when you think about romance. The meet cute, the first time someone says, I love you, there can be a lot of tension in that moment that you could write a great story about. The first look, the lingering and the wondering what happens after an event in which they're not together. The moment you realize that the person is the one, or the first kiss, even the last kiss. Oh, that's my moment of realization with my husband where we met. And then there are moments worth recognition that a lot of people don't think of when they write a story. And like I said, I really love getting these types of stories because we don't get a lot of them. And I feel like there's so much romance in them. So the engagement, the letting go, such as when in a marriage, when the spouse is passing on. This was kind of my story with Love at the Roller Rink, the one I read you just a minute ago. His wife has dementia and he was taking her back to the place where they fell in love. An older couple who are married, which is still romantic. A life event that alters a romance, a move, a new job, celebrating an anniversary, not just the wedding. And that's my anniversary. 18 years. That was actually 3 years ago, though. So there are a number of ways that we see at Spark. We'll see a really, really great writing. And then it'll have something like this that'll just kind of make it hard to acquire the story. The first one is they tell the entire story. I do remember getting one story. This was 4 years ago. And the writer had done a beautiful job setting the stage. Her writing was gorgeous, like super lyrical, almost literary, which I love. It was set in a foreign country, which I also really love because we don't see a lot of those. Like, she told the entire story from the moment they met to the story was 60 years long, like to when he went off to war, and then when he came back, and then when he died, and then when she was at the river grieving his death. It was like an epic book in 1,000 words. It was very hard to follow, and it was impossible to feel connected to the characters because the pacing was so fast, and there was only a few sentences for each, period of their relationship. So I was really sad to have to turn that one down because I really love the writer's voice and writing and setting. And I just wish they had kind of just told one moment of that story. Having large time gaps again, you know, in flash fiction, you don't want to have them meet in the story and then the next, like, have like a scene break and then it's like 6 years later. Like, it's really unsettling to read that when you have such like just one page to read. You could always have like a small little flashback and have like the character remembering when they met and like just a memory. That would work if you want to do that. Mistaking raunchiness for romance. There is a way to write romance that's not raunchy. Some people don't recognize how to do that, but there is. Writing men as though they're women. This is one of my pet peeves. I hate reading a man who thinks like a woman. I've been married to one for 21 years, and I can tell you right now, he does not think the same way I do. He doesn't think about the way my hair smells. He doesn't notice teeny tiny little details that a woman would notice. So just make sure that your men, sensitive men, I love sensitive men, but make sure that they're actually men and they're not women dressed up as men. I really don't like when the characters are jerks, especially the men. Some people kind of think that a jerky man is like sexy or something. I don't think that. I really don't like that. I want the heroes to be, even if they have flaws, I want them to be good people at heart. No abuse. I am not interested in abuse on any level. So about 4 years ago, we had vacation issue, which I was really excited about because I love to travel. I was hoping to get stories set in these like far-flung, really cool places. And I think we got, I don't know, 90 submissions that issue. At least 80 of them were set at the beach. It was one beach story. And there were lots of really good beach stories, but there were only so many beach stories I could acquire. You know, I couldn't have an entire issue full of beach stories. The topic wasn't the beach. Otherwise, that would have been great, but it wasn't. So the people who wrote, for instance, like a story set in Venice or in Japan, like they were much more likely to get acquired just because it was interesting and it was unique. It was different from all the rest of them. And I was willing to put a little more work into editing them to get them ready because the setting was so much different than all the rest of them. So a lot of people I know when they heard, you know, like this travel issue, vacation issue, they like immediately they thought, oh, I'm going to write a story set at the beach, which is fine, but just know that that's everybody else's first thought too. So maybe think, okay, maybe I can think of a beach that's not tropical or set in the United States. That would have set it apart. Maybe I could set a beach at, you know, in Thailand, you know, or a beach in England. Or maybe I won't do a beach at all and I'll just write a book set in Thailand or England. Just something different. Don't like push into your story a little bit. Don't just like the first thing that comes to your head, like think, okay, what can I do to make this just a little bit different from everybody else's?
Kim, can I say something there?
Yeah.
So that's so important. Hope and I both heard some of this at Blue Ridge years ago, and the issue was on sports. And Hope chose the rodeo, and I chose croquet, and we both got acquired. So that was how we can, you know, it's really important. I mean, when you think sports, you do not think croquet. So that when Kim said that, I was like, what's the weirdest sport I can think of? Yeah.
Well, and they were both really well-written stories too. So that was kind of a no-brainer. But yeah, I love the rodeo and croquet. That was so like in the middle of all these baseball stories. Like I had the croquet and rodeo, which was so cool. I love that so much. Yeah, that's probably honestly for me as an editor, that's one of the most important facets of a story outside of good writing. Is that it has an interesting twist and it's just different than the rest of the stories. Try not to use too many characters. We got a story once that was set at a wedding. It was really good. We did acquire it, but we had to tell the author to eliminate like 7 of the characters because it was so busy. It was like, you know, when you're reading a book and like somebody goes somewhere and you're already established with that character and all of a sudden there's like 15 new characters. You know, and then it takes you a while to kind of figure out who everybody is. Well, you don't have time to figure out who everybody is in flash fiction. So just don't introduce them. Like combine characters if you can, get rid of unnecessary characters and try to keep the character count down. Don't preach. We love a fate thread at Spark, but don't be preachy. And we all know what that means. Have too many flashbacks. It's okay to have a small one here or there, but if the bulk of your story is flashback, then you're actually writing the wrong story. And no info dumps. And these, like, some of these are just good writing tips. You know, you don't want to have info dumps in a book either. So just try with the info dumps. I love beautifully written books and stories. I love literary books. I love descriptive passages. Like my books are 130,000 words long. So obviously I love words. Okay. So I love when an author is trying to describe, you know, a setting or the way someone looks or giving like lots of backstory at once. Like I get what they're trying to do. Just try to, like I said earlier, do double duty with your words and pick. So if your character, if you want to describe your character and like say your hero wants to describe your hero and you know show how handsome he is, like pick one distinguishing feature that you can then like keep going back to. So it's not so much information, it doesn't take up so much space. If he has dimples, talk about the dimples. I'm a sucker for dimples. So before we go to our upcoming themes, I'd like to open it up and see if anyone has any questions that we can kind of expand on or clarify.
Kim, I think we could expand on the romance part a little bit.
Yeah.
I know we're going to probably do another class on even just kissing.
Yeah.
But I think it's important. I wrote a story that was rejected because this romance thing. I mean, the end was about a soldier coming home from war, but the whole story pretty much took place with the mother and the daughter who was pregnant. And so, you know, there was some romance at the end, but that was it. And it was a good story. And it's on my website if you want to read it. But to see what I'm saying here is it wasn't romance. It was about a mother-daughter kind of relationship. And then the soldier came home and there was a kiss. I mean, it was a good kiss, but it was only so many words. And so I think that's really important. When I was reading some of our submissions that we didn't accept and stuff, that I think we see that a lot. It's like, okay, here it is at the end, or, you know, it's all in one character is only, there's no interaction between the two characters. And then all of a sudden at the end, they're together. Well, you can't have romance if you don't have both characters involved pretty much from the beginning. So I think that that's an really important thing for us for writing romance, not for writing all stories, but for writing flash fiction romance, you need to have both characters kind of going from the very start.
And the conflict has to be between those characters, internal or external conflict. Like if your conflict is with a different character or something that has nothing to do with the other person, it's not romance. And so if the other part of that couple is expendable, then what you're writing is not a romance. So yeah, that's super important. Just keep in mind, if the conflict is not between that couple, then you're probably not writing a romance and you might want to reevaluate the story if you're writing it specifically for us. Now, if you're not writing it for us, obviously it's fine to not write a romance. Yeah, that's a good point. I really did like that story, Leslie. I'm sorry. Does anyone else have anything to add? Any questions, or if any of the other Spark ladies want to add anything?
I was going to reiterate what you said about the conflict because, yeah, it's, you know, when we say something has to happen, it's not just about the action. It's not just about the romance, but it has to be conflict. Like that's what makes it interesting, because happy people doing happy things is not interesting to read. So you've got to make sure that there is some kind of a conflict and tension between the characters that is going to be resolved or is on the way to being resolved by the end of the story. Yeah.
A story that we acquired, I'm trying to remember when we did. I think it was like maybe 2 issues ago. And I'm forgetting the details. So if this person is going to watch this, I'm sorry. But from what I can remember, I do remember the essence of the story. What I remember, it was set at like a benefit at a high school, and the hero had come back and he'd gone off and become like, I think like a famous, maybe athletic star. And he came back and there was like a history between the characters, and all the conflict was internal. It was in the woman's head, you know, but it was between her and the man. Like it wasn't conflict between her and something else. And that's kind of an example of a story that, and I'll go ahead and when we post this, I'll go ahead and find the story and link to it in the comments. But it's an example of a story where, you know, there doesn't have to be these big things happening to have conflict. but there was a lot of tension between that couple. And you know, there's the whole will they, won't they thing. And that's what you want the reader to think. Will they get together? Will they? And it's romance. We know they're going to get together. But still, while you're reading it, will they get together? Won't they get together? You know, it's like pulling off, you know, petals from a daisy. So yeah, just kind of think about that. Like make sure that there's conflict. That's a good point. Make sure there's a lot of conflict and tension between that couple. Okay. Feel free to ask questions too when we post this. If you think of any other questions, you can ask them in the comments and we'll keep track of that. So here are our upcoming themes. Hope is super excited about this one. Our next theme is romantic suspense, submission deadlines in January. We're reaching out to some of our feature authors, right? Like possible feature authors right now. So hopefully we'll have that information for you soon. Trying to think if there's anything in particular I'm looking for in romantic suspense. I don't actually read romantic suspense except for Hope's. so I don't. Hope, do you have anything that you would want to say about that?
I think we are going to do another little talk like this about that specifically, but yeah, that one, you know, you have to be careful because, you know, you can't build an entire case. You can't have a murder and an investigation and catching the killer. Like you're going to have to pick a moment. And again, you know, you're looking for romance between characters. You're looking for conflict and tension in the middle of there being some sort of element of danger. I want to say that Splickety did a romantic suspense issue way back in the day because I remember reading one from a friend of mine that she wrote something like that. But anyway, and I know I did, again, that was another issue that Spark did that I was published in before we even took it over. The issue about, I think it was the Sadie Hawkins issue where it was like the woman making the first move. Yeah. I wrote that one about spies.
I love that story. Yeah, I remember that one.
Yeah. So that one, you know, they were basically, it was, and I should probably get that one ready for our talk, but there was, I didn't like build the whole case. They were just there to capture somebody. And then they did, you know, and there was you know, some fighting and some danger, but there was also romance and tension between the characters and that kind of thing. So, yeah, it's good. That one's very much going to be about picking the right moment, I think.
Yeah. Also, because I know that Hope's favorite thing is not writing kissing scenes. Sometimes when you write romantic suspense, you have a tendency to be very action heavy, which is fantastic, right? We love action stories. I also really like kissing scenes too. So make sure you don't neglect the physical attraction between your couples. A really great kiss just like kind of seals the deal for me. Summer, we're going to do this one. I think this was Leslie's idea, right? Which I love. Inspired by songs. Submission deadline is in May. Leslie, do you want to talk a little bit about that one?
Yeah, I would just say we talked about this earlier on a different, I think, class, but it's important not to like just write the song. It's inspired by songs. And so sometimes you pick the opposite POV of the person singing the song, like switch it up. Or maybe do the next scene that would have happened because of the song, or maybe just the like what would have happened in this situation, or what would have inspired maybe even the songwriter to write the song, what story would have been there. And I personally lean towards country music for my inspiration from songs because so many country music songs really are stories. They just do a really good job of storytelling in their songs. And so it's just a great place to go. But one of my favorites was I just totally swapped the POV character, and I put it out to my newsletter subscribers and just said what songs is, you know, based on, and they all right away got it. It was pretty obvious, but I was really careful because it was really close, but I was really careful about not using any of the words that were in the song. But it's I think it's fun. I'll hear songs on the radio all the time and like be like, oh, I should write a story about this, and they're just inspiring to me. So yeah, I think it's gonna be so
pretty fun. Yeah, I think it's gonna be a lot of fun. I'm actually I don't really listen to music very much. However, with that, which is super funny because my husband's a worship leader. But with that being said, I'm going to be looking again for songs outside of the box. I do really love like Celtic women and I love Bollywood music. I would love to see a Bollywood story. Somebody write that. Someone write a Bollywood story for me inspired by a Bollywood song. That would be so much fun. Oldies like are a lot of fun. I really love ABBA. Like there's a lot of things thinking kind of like maybe not just contemporary songs, like think maybe before or a different culture. That would be a lot of fun. So yeah, I'm really excited for that one. I think that's going to be great. And the next one is Falling in Love for fall, submission deadline. So we always see a lot of Christmas stories, right? Everyone writes Christmas novellas. And our little writing group had like the idea, like we should write fall stories. Fall is a better season than winter. So this is all going to be stories, you know, at the pumpkin patch, like drinking cider, like on a hayride, you know, Halloween, like that type of stuff, pumpkin pies and pecan pies and that type of stuff. So we're excited for that. I would really love to see just some like really sweet stories with that one. I think the season kind of lends itself to that. So looking forward to that. So right now we do just 3 issues of Spark a year, and we're hoping eventually like to add another one and do a 4th issue. And then as we grow and acquire more people working for us and more submissions, you know, hopefully we can expand that. I'm going to sneeze again. Oh, excuse me. Sorry. All day long. Yeah, so that's all we have for this. We're going to be doing more of these. We're going to post them in our group so that you guys kind of get an insider's look at what we're looking for, learn more about writing flash fiction. So keep an eye on that. We're going to do a kissing one pretty soon, I think. And I think Hope said something about doing a suspense one. So we're excited about doing these videos. We want to help you guys grow as writers, and we want you to get published if you're not already published. We want to acquire your stories and help you build that foundation. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask now or later on in the comments of this video when we post it. We're always open to chatting with you guys. Okay.
Yeah, any other questions? Anybody got, there's no such thing as a dumb question. So if you have any questions, please ask. I have a question. How many of the people on here have actually, not counting us that are with Spark, how many people have actually written flash fiction?
I've written some flash fiction.
You have? Okay.
Yeah.
Have you had it published anywhere?
No, honestly, I've never actually sought to have it published. So
Oh,
you guys are my first foray into the into looking for a publisher.
cool. That'd be
Hey, that's
great.
exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let us know if you do decide to submit to us. Just let us know in your submission email that you were part of this video chat.
I will do. Awesome.
Hey, Karen, I know you've written, and we acquired, I think, at least one of your stories. Have we done 2 or just one? Just one? Can you tell us, like, when you first sat down to try it, what was maybe a challenge that you found with writing flash
Are you
fiction? Yeah, Karen, I'm talking to you.
Are you talking to me, Hope?
Yeah.
When I went to y'all's session before, so I was published, I think, the summer before last. And when you guys talked about it's a moment in time.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of thinking of this big book, it's a moment. It's not even a scene, it's a moment. That was so helpful for me. And it was a beach theme. I think it was beach theme, but
Yeah, I remember your story.
when I started to write it, when I started to write it, it became very different than when I first started. So, so yeah, that was fun. But when you described it as a moment, that was so helpful because I think mine took 5 minutes. You know, the whole thing is a 5-minute snippet.
Yeah,
So
it's a good,
that was
yours
very
is a good
helpful for me.
story. I remember that one very specifically.
Which issue was that, Karen?
It was the Summer Loving one
Oh, okay.
that
Okay.
Leslie McKee edited.
Which story was it?
Well, I don't remember the name, but it was about,
It was a forget
I
what
think she's,
back
you're cutting up.
Yeah, Karen's breaking up.
about. It was 2 couples. It was the grandfather and his longtime love, and then that that woman's grandson and his
Okay.
daughter were meeting.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. You know, you feel proud because we got a lot of beach stories. So if your beach story made it through, it
Yeah.
was good.
And it was unique. Hers was unique because it
Yeah.
was a twist. It wasn't just this young couple meeting, but
Yeah.
it was also the older couple reuniting. It was kind of a cool.
And that's what I love to see. I love to see kind of like
Yeah.
turning themes and stuff on its head. So do something a little bit different. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that. Great.
Jennifer just wrote.
but I also
a-
submitted for one.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that I also submitted one for another one. I think it was in the summer, and you rejected it. And now I know why you did, because the conflict was not between the couple.
Mhm.
It was her father. So
Yeah.
now I know. So it's a good story, but wasn't romance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good. And like I said, we'll occasionally acquire a women's fiction, but not very often. And it has to, I mean, there
Yeah.
has to be a very strong romantic thread in that story because we publish
Right.
romance. So we want our readers coming
Right.
into reading the stories. We have to give them what we promise. You know,
Right.
so they're coming to read romance. They want to read romance. They want to get some kissing scenes. They want that conflict between the hero and heroine.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, I'm so glad that you guys stopped by. I hope that this was helpful. And I hope to see your stories submitted for our next issue. Just make sure when you do submit, if you just let us know, you know, I was part of that Spark Flash Fiction Zoom call. Try and give you a little bit extra attention. Thanks for stopping by.